thank you for coming tonight for our kickoff of Pride Weekend. Yes. So we're thrilled to be here tonight, and just a little housekeeping. There are washrooms behind you, fire exit here, and I've got some water and masks if anybody wants any. Feel free to step out if you need to. And first of all, I'd like to introduce our CEO, and she would like to do a land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. So thanks everyone again for joining us tonight. So the Collingwood Public Library has a responsibility to raise awareness of the history and ongoing impacts of colonialism on this land. We acknowledge the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818, and that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples. We honor them for having lived here and cared for this land from time immemorial, and we recognize the reality of our shared history and the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community. We seek to honor Indigenous peoples, history, and culture, and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth, respect, and reconciliation. And now it is my honor to introduce Rick Prashaw, who I think is going to give us a really beautiful presentation here this evening. So Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Play them and this is an Ottawa high school that pulled together some pride clubs. It's one of my favorite times.
Keep going. Continue.
Yeah, you can put them all.
Okay.
That's my kid, Adam. Hockey goalie, loved vulcanized rubber, shot at 45 times. That was the kid that was born. Announced by a happy intern as a beautiful baby girl. These are pictures that are in either book. Uh-oh. We were part of a singing group of priests called the Hidden Talent. I know we raised about $250,000 for an African village. We sort of were inspired by the hockey flying fathers. That's a lady about 3 chapters you're going to have to read. The more interesting pieces. My parents, Mom and Dad, Rick and Rick Prashaw. 2 books. An important slide that will talk about Adam and Adam's name.
Continue.
Are we done? Is that it?
No, there's.
And we'll certainly tell that story. John Dickout, Adam's organ donor story. A selfie that he did a picture and put on Instagram about 3 minutes before his drowning. And it became a couple. If only people could just see through another's eyes and truly understand what they go through, think and see. It's not always as easy as it seems. We all need help, love, and support, no judgment. He was sort of my philosopher king.
That's it. And that's the last one, Rick.
Are we done?
Yep.
Is that it? Okay. So, we're going to start? Well, this is wonderful. Wonderful. I want to thank Ashley, especially always for the land acknowledgement and your kind words. And Lori, who we've been talking about this event for a long time pre-COVID.
Yeah.
It just seemed a long time that we had to kick it away. And I have a confession. Lori, from my behavior in libraries, whatever happened to the stern librarian with the cross look? I never find that librarian that always flashed that wide look.
Yeah.
But no, I seem to be the guy that always gets that look, you know. But this library, they're lovely people. We've got English for second language, employment, refugees. It's noisy, it's childcare, and I love it. It's just like a community hub. So I just love having a library. So that's one of my happy places to be here. And as far as Collingwood goes, I have been to Collingwood about 40 times because my brother, Marty, who some of you may know and was a teacher at high school with the other name for it, and he was a chaplain, guidance, I think Spanish, French maybe, and his lovely partner Maggie and 4 kids, Claire, Natalie, Emily, and Ben. And so for 40 years I've been driving to Collingwood. So obviously Pride, Collingwood, and the library is just gets me into my happy place. One of the funniest stories I ever heard from a librarian was my friend Amy Olson. She is Hyde Park, Vermont. And introducing me, she told the story where this little boy, about 11 years old, came with a very sad look. And he apologized that he had lost the bookmark that Amy gave him. And he asked, "Is it okay? I read the whole book because I lost the bookmark." So, yeah, a reader was clearly born. So, I also want to acknowledge an association that I, as an author, belong to, the Writers Union of Canada. They're funding me for this appearance. They fund authors for community appearances and also for schools. I do a lot of school events, so it's the Writers Union of Canada, and I'm really so appreciative for that. I have a confession, because I'm sort of used to that, or at least I was. This is a personal confession. So people would say, you know, yeah, you're pretty good at public speaking, and as a priest, they would listen to me, and they'd never see any notes, and they'd say, are you nervous? Well, I said, you guys don't understand. I said, I'm the guy that wears the dress. And you don't see the knees knocking in my dress. So there I am with the owl wearing it. But I am nervous. I am very nervous because, and I don't even know if Lori knows this because it kind of came public with my author phase, is that in the conversation that we had this spring, 2023, cousin of mine was visiting me in Montreal, and she hadn't seen me for a long time, and I wasn't behaving, you know, normal. There was an odd sense that she says, there's something wrong with Rick. And so she texts my sister traveling in Italy, and she texts her son, who is also my godson, Brendan, and he listened to me, and he said, Uncle Rick, have you been drinking? I said, no, I wish. I said, he said, Uncle Rick, we think you're having a stroke. You're slurring, and you're studying, and you're never a man for lost words. And that was the identification of a ischemic stroke on March the 21st, and a blockage with my carotid artery, and the blood was not getting to the brain. And weirdly, I did not know this for about 3 months. And so I was admitted at the Ottawa Civic Campus, and within 3 days I had a surgery. And the blessing is that I know we all know people, and we all get an imagination of how bad strokes can get. And this really was a blessing because there was, on the right side, no speech on the left side, and no physical deficit, although sometimes my left side gets a little weak if I forget the rules that the therapist who told me. And the speech was okay, but there have been problems, cognitive stuff, working memory. Like, for example, my friend Alana, who I'm going to introduce herself, I forgot where my brother lived. I went into the wrong car, she was supposed to be my driver, and these things happen all the time. The calendar, the clock, the word, when I looked at a dog and I said the rule. I said, oh my God, I've said that word 100,000 times. And so this has been quite a struggle, and yet honestly, it has been pretty good. All things, because I have a couple of friends who have really so suffered. And so I am fortunate in terms, and I've had 2 more months of Ottawa rehab with all the kind of therapists. And it was a wake-up call that I should have had a long time ago. With respect to one of the things you screw up with words, and I said, well, now I've chosen my North American diet. And I go, oh no, it's the Mediterranean diet. I said, that was the problem, it was my North American diet. It was the and I have Mediterranean diet. I love aquafit classes. I love my new step and my aerobic, and walking, and learning Italian for another tour that I'm going to do in my father's military battlefield. And just exercising the brain. But the hardest thing for me has been energy, because I was like a oil well or a BC fjord, or I just had this unbelievable energy. And therapists have taught me that there's just so little energy. And it's always when I have a bad day is when I forget that. So I'm nervous, because this is my first time post-stroke recovery, and I asked for a stool, and I've never, ever in a talk had index card. Because I noticed in some conversation, I felt like I was treading water, and a little voice would go, and I said, okay, where are you going with this? You know, and I'm treading fast and fast and fast. But it has been quite an experience. So, the energy has been the biggest lesson with words and with the clock and with the calendar. The good news for you, I used to talk 60 minutes, now it's 30 minutes. That's your best news at all, you know, and I probably should have shut up a long time ago so that people would actually know the story. Okay, I don't know, I'm not going to question you about any age and demographics, but in my age as a boy, and even as a lesson, life was pretty simple. Boy, girl, there's your lockers, and there's your bathrooms. Pretty simple, eh? Now, I've learned it's not so simple. Because on the book tour, one of the big mistakes I made, I projected that every single person on the rainbow people, and in the trans and in the non-binary people, have Adam's story. And of course it wasn't. The beauty was the diversity within the diversity. And so I met 2 85-year-old women in a book tour. It was like they rehearsed the story. They each told me, whispered, when I was 5 years old at my elementary school, the teacher divided the lines for the boys and the girls, and I was 5 years old, and I said, I'm in the wrong line. And that blew me away. 85 women at 5 years old, recognizing something, you know, in their life. So not necessarily boy, girl, lockers, everything, and bathroom. And one of the Pride posts, which was the Dallas dog thing, I posted for, I just did it a few weeks ago for Ottawa Pride. A story on this photo, Dallas has a ridiculous living room full of toys and bones. I predictably know she regularly chooses which bone, except for 2 weeks ago, she has dragged the Pride kerchief, never, ever before, and she continually makes it into a blankie. And she never did this before, but she's fascinated by the colors of the rainbow, so I've been grinning. So my Facebook post was this. While reading the news media discourages me, of course, on thefts of the flag, destruction of the Pride crosswalk, schools or councils dumbly not flying the flag, I am so encouraged by the good news and so many young people and families finding their courage and demanding respect and their rights, despite this undeserving need to assert who they are. Like, for example, I'll always remember the Pembroke youth who were turned down by their town council for the crosswalk in Pride, and they rallied people, and they won the fight. And they all had a Pride crosswalk, and they won the fight by learning that they had to speak up for themselves. And now my neighbor Corey, I'm in a new housing co-op. He's 6 years old, Corey. He was slighted by a teacher refusal, shocked that would not accept his request for a pride presentation. And so the mother, a fierce lioness, returned to the school. But before she came, the teacher was grinning and said, yes, Corey's gonna have a presentation. The entire class convinced me. They had Corey's back. And they said, Corey wants to tell us about pride. And I said, wow, what a story. And a non-binary great-nephew who unapologetically, Joel, invited us to his gorgeous embrace of who he was, 6 years or 7 years of age. And in my post, I just say, I'm envious for his beautiful ponytail, his earrings, and as his dad rolls his eyes, even tacky jewelry. That Joel is just flourishing. I want to protect him. I want to protect Corey. I can't do it all the time, but I try to love them all. So boy, girl, bathroom lockers, it's just a fascinating, interesting place that I'm learning. Pronouns. Boy, did I learn about pronouns. I didn't know pronouns. Why would I have pronouns? Well, this Anglican staff woman said, Rick, what's your pronouns? I said, well, he and him. Okay, put that in. Why would you put the burden on just some people not to share pronouns? I went, okay. The light came on and said, yeah, of course that makes sense. And it was just a whole lesson. My son, Adam, was forgiving for this old man, and I would screw up some of the pronouns from the age young ago when the doctor said beautiful baby girl. Well, I had said that a long time, for about 20 years, and I was pretty good with the pronouns. Adam's mother said, you're pretty good. I said, I'm pretty good. Do you see when I screw up, when the kid gives me a death stare? He gives me like a death stare, like I've killed him. And the more I looked at that, I said, well, maybe I did. You know, maybe I did, in the sense of, but in truth, he was extremely generous, and he recognized my effort, and I was trying, and that was the important thing. So pronouns, and Corey and Joel is all around here. I wanted to think about a young friend of mine, a young black woman, when I worked with her political staff for the NDP and members of parliament. And everybody said to her, oh, Atana, you're so resilient. Well, did she hate that word? And there were a few F-bombs, and I was listening to her, and nobody did F-bombs like Atana. And she said, you know why I'm resilient? Because nobody listens to my rights, harassment, discrimination, racism. I am tired of being resilient. And when I tell this story in any pride community, there's nodding of heads. We're just tired a little bit of being resilient. Where is our normal path that, folk that might not assume the privilege that they have? But Atana has taught me so many things on that. Now, as a pastor, as a church pastor, I love the Jesus stories. And I would tell the Jesus stories and just reframe them. And I started noticing the stories about this guy. And the fact was, who's this guy's hanging around? But isn't this interesting? The despicable Pharisees that were just heretical and hair-splitters, and he hung with them. He hung with the tax collectors, and they were still not good reputation, even now, the tax collectors, and the adulterous women. All the people that were demonized, the people that were vulnerable, the people who are on the edges. This is the guy who the followers might not just get it right, who he hangs. And he never accused any of them except for the accusers. He accused the accusers all the time in Scripture. And of course, that's not an easy lesson. It's lost. It's lost. And so I struggled about this talk that I was going to give because I said, no, Rick, this is not a Jesus thing. I'm not going to do theology. That's not what I'm going to do tonight, because they don't need that, because I'm not going to say people who have been hurt and assaulted and all these things, and say, well, you know, those people are really wrong. They've lost souls. They've lost the vision. That's not really helping when you're victimized. They really know that your accuser is wrong, you know? So I said, no, I'm not going to do a real talk on that. I will talk to some followers, and I do some preaching, actually. But Jesus' social program is solidarity. That was his entire program. Solidarity. We are with someone. No judgment, no hate, no hurt, not God. Can you bring up that one? It's about 2 or 3 about the kissing fish, the progressive Christianity, about it's the I don't know who needs to hear this.
Oh,
It's up a little. Might be back. Right there. I don't know who needs to hear this, but good people don't spend their time harassing marginalized communities. Now, I found that on a progressive Christianity site called Kissing Fish. They have fantastic posts, and I got all kinds of excitement about that from my likes and everybody saying, nodding heavily this message. But because we know that some people just don't get it in terms of the harassment. So for me, the struggle for me is just finding that line of solidarity, which is most important to me. And if there are some followers, I'm in a church, I'll be still telling some of those Jesus stories. I wrote 2 books. Sword and Sword, which is a story of my son's journey to Adam. And actually the parents were not at all surprised by Adam showing up and his fierce Facebook post. And he's actually a co-author, because in a brilliant moment after the tragedy, he often manifested himself to me. It seemed to be on the pillow, and I got a strong message. I was paraphrasing his Facebook post. No, Dad, no. My words. It was a strong message. And so a lot of people who enjoy the book just love my Philosopher King. So they're on the margins, 200 Facebook posts, hilarious, which Dad didn't always find them hilarious. And insanity, hockey stuff, his craziness for Carey Price and the Montreal Canadiens and all this stuff. It was a CBC Books selection. So the true story of Sword and Sword was my son's journey and the roller coaster ride I took as a parent, okay? So everybody, when I went for 35 cities to Sword and Sword, inevitably the same question came to me. So you were a Catholic priest? Yes. And you're a proud father of a transgender son? Yes. And they all look and say, and so where are you with the church and God and faith? And I realized, every question. So I said, I think I have another book. Another book. So I wrote this second book called Father Rick Roaming Catholic with my crooked straight journey. And there is a time in that book when I revisit Adam. 3 key chapters when I try to understand a faith lens for Adam, for all of Adam's brothers and sisters, and all those transgender young people, all of the families, how God views this. And so it is an answer, by the way, in the book. My faith, my church, my God. When you write a book, some things happen that you're surprised. You think what you're going to write, and I'm saying I'm just going to tell it from my faith story. But another person, huge in my life, showed up in big time in this book, my father. And he was a devout Roman Catholic. he was an usher. And if you get to know his story, and of course, sometimes we as adolescents, we roll our eyes and we're embarrassed, like from our parents, we just want to die and want the earth to swallow us. And he was a clown. And I didn't understand why he needed to be a clown in his life, because at 2 years age, with vaudeville parents barnstorming all across North America, he was dropped to an orphanage. At 2 years of age till 8 years of an age, he was an orphan with severe, pretty strict German nuns in Kitchener-Waterloo. But he learned the faith, and it was a seed, a good seed for him. And he was in the Depression. He was a soldier in Canada's battle in Italy, which is where I'm going for the tour for. And he had a school of hard knocks. He never knew his father. His father disowned him. And yet this devout Roman Catholic, he was actually teaching me that I didn't understand. He tagged me away and we go to Santa Fund. And we go to some really hard cases. And there was never any condescension ever from him. He inevitably teased them, joked them, get them to have a joy thing about that. He was a driving force that, not in the anti-migrant stage, he completely created in our North Bay Pro-Cathedral Assumption for boat people, the Vietnamese families that we took. And he was the driving force of that. We had a Mexican boy that stayed for about a year. My best friend was Michael, and I was a bit clueless at the time about who Michael liked and who Michael loved. It's those friendships that we have in school that we just walk and we solve everything and every problem. We talk about everything important, but I didn't pay much attention that we all seemed to have a girlfriend, and Michael didn't have a girlfriend. And so it wasn't until a long time, about 15 years, I came to Calgary, and the greatest meal of my life, meeting Michael and his husband. And I said, Michael, what was it like in North Bay? And he shared what it was like when he couldn't be who he was and in the closet. But you know what he said? And I wasn't inviting him to say it. He said, but your father loved me. Your father hugged me. And I was saying, well, would he know? He says he knew that I wasn't anybody. And he teased me, and he says, I loved your dad. And so here's this priest, like the eyes sometimes need to be opened up, that I hadn't recognized that he loved the other. He loved the other in the community. And of course, given his story, he would recognize himself always being, the outcast. So it's a great lesson for me. And I want to teach two readings here in Father Rick. Conversion therapy. There were a lot of faith communities submitting quite transphobic briefs to parliamentarians. Fortunately, the bill was passed in terms of being defeated, but I want to tell you a reading is just 5 paragraphs that was a little reflection I had in Elliot Page, but then this was my brief to Parliament for the conversion therapy, and I called it I Am Adam. And that was exactly the calling of his Facebook post. With a lot of interesting words. It is a Facebook post. And I said to the parliamentarians, Adam taught me, reminded me of core values. Be who we are. Love who we love. This is what I wanted in my life. Who doesn't want that? What we desire for ourselves, can we not gift to one another? At no time did we as parents ever, for Adam, impose our desires for ourselves or treatment or therapy other than listening, learning, and loving were our 3 elements while we learned a lot of lessons. We appreciated the international tests, the social workers, and doctors that were integral partners on his gender journey. It is a serious and lengthy process. Transgender is a label. There are the extraordinary individual human beings in the trans community. Some I met reminded me of Adam, while others had quite different stories. Some wanted surgery, some didn't want surgery. Some were out there public, some were not there public at all. Some changed names. Some had not decided. I came to appreciate the diversity in this community, the rainbow within the larger Rainbow Pride community, and I heard about the hurts and hate they had endured in their journey home to themselves. And I witnessed the stereotypes, myths, and ignorance. I learned about the alarming number of suicides, the self-harm, the homelessness, and other forms of injury and discrimination. Too many choose to play God and judge, in this case wrongly. Faith is never a license to hate. I have never once in my heterosexual orientation or marriage or family ever be threatened by the differences in other people's gender identity or orientation. But I have felt threatened by those who hate and hurt others for religious and political reasons. So that brief is in there. Now, can you get up, Lori, the ID tag for my boy? And I have it here. It's my dog tag, my lifetime. It's sort of a healing for me. He became a chef, assistant chef for his job, that he was never in his job. He was never Adam. And he got an ID of his name. And so he was very proud of this ID tag. And I didn't understand it because his boss loved him. His boss adored him. And when Adam drowned with an epilepsy seizure, he opened up the doors of Museum of Nature to 700 people, and he fed them. And he wanted to honor my son. And he says, Rick, have I not told you what happened at the interview? I said, no, Joel, you never told me that story. He said, he said, he was a typical kid. You know, he was awkward, he was shy, he was nervous. He said his head stared right on the floor, you know? And I said, finally I had to have him out, and I said, hey, what's with this name thing? Everything you give me doesn't have your name, Adam. And he said, he went boom, right, he said up, there was no staring. He locked my eyes, he said, that's my name. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. And Joel looked at him and said, you're going to be Adam here. And he says, I'm going to have something for you. And he gave him this name tag. And so me as a former priest, I thought about the Judeo-Christian tradition. Prophet Isaiah, I have called you by name. Do you understand the power of naming, who our names are? And this was a divine blessing, that Adam blessed himself with the divine blessing. And so what is gorgeous to me in the Rainbow people are all the names coming up. And the young people are naming themselves. And who knows, maybe we have a roll of an eye. That's okay, as parents, that's not a problem. But you know, there's spelling and we're learning. And boy, once you see a name, just ask. You'll be fascinated to find out what that name is. But this is their naming. And I never understood the creation value of her name. That I have called you by name. And it was a gorgeous story that is boss. Now I'm just going to tell you one more story. Unfortunately, these stories happen. I wish they didn't happen. But in my book here, in the fall of 2019, there was breaking news in Picton, Ontario, in Prince Edward County, where I'd enjoyed a moving Trans Quinte fundraiser a few months ago. Songs, poems, stories, music. The love in the room was palpable. However, less than 4 months later, CBC News reported that a community protest of more than 400 people had sprung up around St. Gregory's Roman Catholic Church. One protester in the counter-protest carried the sign, I love you, I love all of you. A Prince Edward County community page on Facebook had encouraged families to join a peaceful protest outside St. Gregory's in support of Pride. The reason this counter-protest happened was that there was news among another Facebook that the protest was the response to a church bulletin notice from the previous week that was tucked between news for a potluck supper and gratitude for donations for a new church door. I have the bulletin notice, but I just realized that I probably shouldn't have put it in there. At least I should have had a warning prior to, because I do have some warnings, and I blew it on that one, but I'm not going to read that for you. But of course, we know these messages, you know. Warnings against you can't, as Catholics, go to the Pride. You don't bring your children there. And of course, the tagline was, and they're all getting government tax dollars. And okay, so Kingston Archbishop Michael Mahar, to his credit, intervened to state he, quote, did not sanction the pastor's message, and it does not reflect the spirit of accompanying charity and compassion that should always characterize our faith. The Archdiocese has spoken with the pastor of the parish. I'd love to be a fly on the wall on that conversation. But anyway, he regrets any hurt that his inappropriate comments have caused. Within weeks, the Archdiocese announced that the pastor was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into abuse allegations from decades ago. I don't like taking pleasure for anyone's problems, but this news did not at all surprise me. There had been other clerics and politicians loud in hateful judgments, some done in by their personal demons. As the psychologist Robert Johnson wrote in Owning Your Shadow, it's best not to sweep part of oneself under the rug. And it's a beautiful book, Owning Our Shadow. And so my gifted nephew Kevin teaches me daily by all these matters. I enjoy friendship with several same-sex couples. They demonstrate great things in their love. They can witness to the same joys and sacrifices and struggles and failures as heterosexual couples experience. Oh, I skipped a paragraph here. 5 minutes after me finding this pastor cut and paste job from a Rhode Island, very notorious conservative bishop, I found that. But then I Googled again, and I Googled that the name of the church was St. Gregory. As a saint, as a pope, as a doctor, this is what St. Gregory in the 5th century wrote about love. The proof of love is always in the works. Where love exists, it works great things. But when it ceases to act, it ceases to exist. 5th century, St. Gregory. But the people at St. Gregory's had not heard a little bit about this. So I'm not going to make a long story. You know this story. There's some Roman Catholic and some work and try hard, and they remember this progressive church, and they know some things have slipped. And some people cringe when they hear the teaching, the latest teaching, the use of illicit judgment and immoral and judgment and no same-sex marriage blessing. And but some of my friends were pushing back. And I want to just leave tonight and let it hang on the air. A friend of mine, Sister Margot Ritchie, who is with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Canada. And this is what she wrote. Some people of faith pushed back. Sister Margot Ritchie, with the congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph, invited the childhood nursery rhyme, Sticks and Stones, and how in fact attacks can make victims quiver and words indeed hurt. She referred to the careless projection onto God of words like illicit and sinful judgment to describe homosexual behavior. And this is her gorgeous words. So, let's try some words that heal, that celebrate, that helps one relax into who we are. Let's begin with love, which makes us whole. Let's follow those words with generativity that cares for others and for the future. And while we are at it, let's throw in courage and steadiness in the face of shaming. And why not include acceptance and appreciation of diversity and maybe end with simple humanity in all vulnerability and beauty. So happy Pride. May we all relax to ourselves, and may our loved ones and family, can we learn practicing that they help to relax. And it's a hard time in our days and end to relax. But this Sister Margot Ritchie, I finally put it on my mirror just to remind myself of probably was the most important part of the book. So the Collingwood Today article, the great Jessica there, she did a great job. She asked me, she didn't actually print the story, but she asked me, she said, what advice would you get people of faith in the LGBTQ? And I went, whoa. And I said, advice is cheap. I offer very little advice. I offer solidarity. Those in Pride are pretty good about their safety, and families understand safety. And sometimes in some religious communities, it's not a safe place. So I said, I'm not preaching, I'm not proselytizing, I'm not pushing anything. But I do know that some Pride people have shared their spirituality. You know, they walk a great path, and some of them remember a Catholic background, and that's very hard on them. But it may be Buddhist, it may be Indigenous, maybe meditation, maybe a canoe and a kayak and seeing the moon fall down the water, and that's their spirituality, and they can have their spiritual path. But there are some oases. Some of you might know about Toronto Metropolitan Community Church. Some of you know in Ottawa, St. John's Anglican Church is a wonderful place. And the Anglican Church have started a rigorous process of 2 years for a community to become a rainbow people. All are welcome. And there are 220 united churches of firm united. But again, I'm not pushing anyone to anything. I'm just saying that that they can practice that spirituality and try to find that safety and relax, with themselves. So we're pretty well done. I want to remember something about my father. When I was a priest at the Pro Cathedral, and he was so insane. Sometimes he'd all fiddle on the hearing aid when I was preaching and distract me. I said, Dad, are you turning it up or down? He never answered the question. So one time as an usher and I'm preaching, and of course typical me, I was carried away and yeah. He gets his watch. And, so I'm only seeing him and I'm cracking. Did I shut up? No, not me. So then he was desperate, and the Ladies Guild were selling calendars, so he grabbed a calendar and went like this, like this. I told Alana, my friend, who by the way, just gorgeous friends with the stroke, she said, Rick, how are you going to get to Collingwood? And she offered a pickup in Toronto, a pickup all the way here, and she's going to drive me to Ottawa. And she remembered youth group and all this stuff with her, and she is a Muskoka Simcoe teacher, retired, in Barrie. So again, I wanted to give a shout. So she's going to sell the book. I will sign anything. If you have someone that you'd like to dedicate the book, or maybe an old nostalgic Roman Catholic who would enjoy all the craziness and enjoy the time travel, because of my hearing, and especially if there's noise, there's a sticky. You have the sticky? And just write the name of whom you want, because again, sometimes I just want to stop in case you're going to wave your watches or do your calendars. I am so happy for you, enjoying Pride. It was my kids' happy place, and I regret. I want to be fair to myself. I did go, but now that I experienced Pride, I get it. I understand how much he enjoyed, the beauty of it. A Pride hockey team came and heard about Adam, and they read the story, and they got me a Pride hockey sweater with him. He said, what hockey player like? I said, oh, he liked Carey Price, he was a goal. So they did it for him. And when they found out about my stroke, they have assigned 3 drivers, and they visit all on my shores. And so this is the beauty that I experience in the Pride community. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everyone. That was a very touching story. I felt the emotion probably as many of you did tonight. Thank you, Ashley Kulchicki. I realized I did not announce her name, so that's Ashley, our CEO. And yes, if anybody's interested to talk to Rick, he welcomes conversation or emails. And yeah.
Yeah, my author's email is soaradamsoar altogether at Gmail. And I just love what I call, I never knew, I should have written long ago, you get love notes and you get the young people write and they tell their stories. And it's just so great, I get so much. So it's soaradamsoar at gmail.com. And I got a little discount on the 2 books, and so anyway, you can visit that. If you do want something for me to sign, it doesn't mean to say any message or anything, whatever. Thank you so much for coming, because hey, it's summer and it's a beautiful night, so I really appreciate it. And Lori, thank you for persevering.
Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah, no, I'm proud to have this as a kickoff for our exciting weekend we have.